Good evening, everybody. I wanted to come on and highlight this article here really quick. It's actually kind of funny because after I did the video yesterday, I came across this literally not even 5 minutes after I did the video yesterday, and I was really upset about it because I was like, man, that would have been my top story, and that really just makes me mad. It irks me. But here we go again with the same kind of rhetoric that we saw last year, and a certain term that we seen all last year that made sense last year, but also we brought a lot of awareness to it. And I personally believe that we got it, postponed at least until this year. Not many people are talking about this, and I really want to, highlight this so we could try to keep getting them to stall their plans a little bit. But check this out. Fauci says U.S. may face dark winter. There it is. Dark winter. Why are they all of a sudden just coming out and saying this again? There has to be a reason. You just don't come out of nowhere and say, oh, it might be, a dark winter is upon us. No, this guy is a Mason. This guy literally walks into any press briefing and puts his hand in his jacket to salute his fellow Masons. There's countless portraits of many world leaders, other officials, and people throughout history literally getting portraits of themselves done in that pose. It's a Masonic pose. That's literally how they salute each other and say hi to each other without the common man noticing. Most people just might have thought that he was, I don't know, making sure he had his keys in his pocket or something. I don't know what people think anymore. But okay. Fauci says U.S. may face dark winter, but it can be avoided if Americans are vaccinated to a very high degree. Well, I thought that, we were already, to a very high degree. Isn't that what they're saying? The reality is none of this is even... And why is it called this? Very high degree. The takeout. Isn't that confusing? Fauci says U.S. may face dark winter, but it can be avoided if Americans are vaccinated to a very high degree. The takeout. That's very odd. I really hope that is some kind of, podcast or something like that. I really hope that's what that is. Let's read. The nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, says the U.S. could be facing another dark winter, though this can be avoided if Americans get vaccinated to a very high degree in the coming months. So it is. Thank God. Thank the Lord that it is some podcast, because that would have been very, very blatant if they would have just been like, yeah, the takeout, like we're taking out the trash. So that is very, very nice to hear. On the Takeout podcast this week, Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett recalled that in late 2020, President Biden had warned that the U.S. was headed for a very dark winter because of the rising COVID cases. He asked Fauci if the prevalence of Delta variant and 70 million Americans still refusing a vaccine could result in the same forecast this winter. To which Fauci said, quote, if we don't get people vaccinated who need to be vaccinated, and we get that conflating with an influenza season, we could have a dark, bad winter. Fauci, the chief medical advisor to President Biden, said. If anything, at the very least, this... Why? Come on, dude. Some kid on a street dirt bike. That's very annoying when I'm trying to do something. Anyway. Okay, so he said we could have a very dark, bad winter. A dark, bad winter. Fauci, the chief medical advisor to President Biden, said. Now, at the very least, this is just straight up fear-mongering. Just, telling people, oh, we're going to have a dark winter and many people are going to die if we don't pressure others and incentivize them and threaten them and even take things away from them if they don't get whatever. And I'm like, who even buys this stuff anymore? It's literally on a loop. They literally repackaged what they told us last year and they just forwarded it this year, and people bought it hook, line, and sinker. And they're going to keep going with it, obviously, because it just keeps working. Because people are just serfs now. They're like, well, time to wait for the TV to tell me what's going on. Because I don't like to think and make decisions on my own. No big deal. However, we could also avoid a dark, bad winter. And why is he saying that? Dark, bad winter. If we get people vaccinated to a very high degree over the next several weeks to a month or two. Fauci also said, adding that there's no room for politicization. I am going to flip out. Politicization. That's what it is. You ever get confused, like trying to say a word, like water bottle, and you say it wrong the first time, and you're like water bottle, water, and you can't say it correctly? Yeah, that just happened to me. So laugh if you want, or not. Vaccines in a public health crisis. Recently, the Biden administration imposed new limits on orders of monoclonal antibody treatments after demand spiked in states that are still heavily unvaccinated and that are seeing high daily rates of C-19 hospitalizations. Since then, a debate has ensued about the ethical implications of the use of monoclonal antibodies to treat the unvaccinated versus those who have been vaccinated but get a breakthrough case of the virus. Fauci said monoclonal antibody treatments should be made available to people who get infected with C-19, whether or not they're unvaccinated or vaccinated. And they just keep going on about all this crap that really is not even, all this does is it keeps legitimizing what we know to not be. Check this out. As the government moves toward expanding the authorization of booster shots for Pfizer vaccine recipients, Fauci said he doesn't recommend getting the boosters unless people are ineligible categories. But despite the fact that over 2 million have gone ahead and gotten a third shot, Fauci showed little concern. Quote, since we already have enough vaccines to not only vaccinate everybody, but boost everybody, I don't think it hurts the larger system, Fauci said. I think everybody just forgets about, something that we were given by God, and that's an immune system. Your body has a natural way of fighting off most things, or else most of us would be sick every single day because we come in contact with so many different bacteria from so many different things. We eat so many different foods that would normally, if you didn't have an immune system, would disagree with you and cause you to be sick. But you have good bacteria in you that fight against that, and you have antibodies that fight against that, also your white blood cells and all that stuff. I'm no doctor, but I have a general understanding of 8th grade biology and 8th grade science, or whatever you want to call it. Fauci worked with 7 U.S. presidents, always talked about the differences between the current one and his predecessor. He said he became a boogeyman for Trump supporters, while the Biden administration has an entirely different approach to C-19. Yeah, that's the Hegelian dialectic. Just always. Always, always, always. But this guy's still in there. Nothing really happened to him. He just kind of, sat back a little bit, waited for the next guy, and then said, boom. He served under 7 presidents. That should already tell you who this guy is. And he just keeps going on about all this stuff here. And he's talking about the people that are against him, and he wasn't against the president. And he just talks about how people say that he flip-flops. And he said, well, flip-flop is, do you change your mind when nothing else has changed? But when the science changes, you change with the science. That's not flip-flopping, Fauci said. All of a sudden, it was me who flip-flopped when it wasn't. The entire system changed based on the science. And check this out. Fauci on another dark winter in 2021, 2022. Are we going to have a dark winter? If we don't get the people vaccinated who need to be vaccinated, and we get the conflating with the influenza season, we could have a dark, bad winter. Now, that's just like highlighting this article and all this stuff here. But think about this. He is not the first nor the last person who will say this phrase in the coming weeks or in the coming months. They're going to start kind of dropping it here and there. The president will say it. The Secretary of State will say it. The press secretary will say it. They'll just keep, going on about the dark winter again. Because we're about in that time, if you haven't noticed. And it's literally the exact same rhetoric as last year. And we need to start spreading awareness on this, because if they start throwing around that term again, and then we just had that stuff today, like Facebook went down, and then Facebook was up for sale, which I also saw on my local news and a bunch of other places. the stocks are way down for it, and then they had a 60-minute segment where this whistleblower came out, which all of that is literally just ironclad distraction. Nothing is ever leaked on accident. If it's leaked, it was done on purpose, and it's distracting you away from something that we should be looking at. I don't quite know what we should be looking at yet, but I am going to do my due diligence and try to see, because they just, happen to leak all the financial records within the Pandora Papers or whatever it's called, and then Facebook goes down along with all the Facebook apps and all that stuff, and it was on 60 Minutes, so it's a mainstream. This guy again on this dirt bike. Anyway, it's a very mainstream like whistleblowing, going against the system tactic, which means that it's actually for the system because it was literally put on 60 Minutes. And we can't get wrapped up in stuff like that thinking that something's going to be done, because as we know, nothing will be done until we do it. Nobody on TV, nobody in power is going to do it for you, and if they do and they're legit, they get taken out. It's as simple as that. These people have had generations and generations in preparation for this. Just something we're going to have to keep an eye on, really. God bless you all.